Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. So yeah, it's a very descriptive piece about the data that Philip and Mark collected around the time when I joined here at the end of last year. So hopefully you'll find the patterns in the data interesting to see. So this is quite, as you'll see, it's quite an unexplored area of activity in universities. So hopefully you'll find this interesting. So what are these public service activities that we're talking about here? So we're looking at everything over and above the core roles of staff that work in universities. So basically this can be divided into two main areas. So we're talking about contribution to public debate. So this is through actual talks and seminars that people give, and also engaging in public debate through media, so through traditional media and social media as well. And then the second main type of activity, we're talking about advisory work, service on boards and committees, and contribution to public consultations, things like that. So basically this is all this kind of extra work that staff do, but we're not talking about paid work. So in the survey, the questions that were asked are just to do with unpaid work, but obviously could include travel expenses, other expenses, and small gifts and things like that, but not really paid work. So the research question really is, who carries out this kind of work in a university and to what extent? So as well as asking, did you do these kinds of activities, we also asked the number of hours contributed then to these things. So the existing literature in the area, to me anyhow, was quite surprising to see that this kind of stuff hasn't been looked at much at all before. So the reports and the papers in this area usually focus on a subset of things rather than try and include everything that you can look at in this kind of area. So either the researchers have focused on a specific subgroup of staff in a university, so either just look at academics or even just a subgroup of academics, so maybe only look at people working in the hard sciences, if you like, or then the reports have just focused on specific activities, so maybe only looking at more monetary collaborations between academics and the industry, or just looking at public talking or things like that. So we feel like this UCD survey is quite a nice piece of work that captures a lot of people and a lot of activities together. But the work that has been carried out previously that's most related to what we're doing are these kinds of reports by the Wellcome Trust and the Royal Society in the UK. So these are charitable organisations, if you like, that promote public service activities in academia, try and encourage collaborations between industry and academics and the like. So obviously they have a specific kind of viewpoint to this research. Also a big report by Abro et al. For the UK Innovation Research Centre is perhaps the most comprehensive report done in the UK in the area. They actually, a lot of this work focuses on the motivations of the staff that engage in this kind of activity. So they ask about the academics' attitudes towards this kind of work and what kind of things prohibit people from engaging in this. There was a paper by Davies in 2013 that looks at only at contract researchers in the UK, just focusing on public engagement. Some more like public talks and university open days and visiting schools and things like that. And then the only piece of more international work that doesn't just focus on the UK was this paper by Besley et al. From 2012 that looks at the data collected by the Royal Society in the mid-2000s, and then another survey of US scientists collected a little bit later, and focuses on the motivations, again comparing the two countries, and the motivation behind why academics engage in public communication with the public. So not an awful lot of work done up to now, so the UCD survey fits in quite nicely. So the survey that Philip and Mark carried out at the end of last year was a survey of UCD staff, so covering both academics and the senior administrators. The population of these two groups in UCD is about 1,600 staff, and a sample of 50% of this population was drawn. The survey was sent out, an online survey, and they got a very nice response rate of nearly 60%, so a very nice coverage. And some of you may have filled this out as well, so thank you for taking part. Obviously some missing data there, so out of the 466 responses that were somewhat complete, then you'll see in the tables that the final sample where all the variables are there is 421. So just looking at what that sample looks like that we got the responses for, so 421 as the total, 63 non-academics, so these senior administrators, so that's about 15% of the sample, and then the rest, 85, being the academics, spread out between the 7 colleges in UCD. So you have 1/5 in the College of Sciences, and then spread out among the other smaller colleges, and then most of the non-academics working in other than colleges, so working in IT or HR or estates and places like that. The gender breakdown there, more males in academics, about 50-50 among the non-academics.
So how representative is this of the population at UCD?
So for the analysis then, you Philip did the weighting, isn't it?
We weighted it back to what we knew about the population, because we had the population parameters.
Yeah, so per the seniority of the position, or type of position, and by the academic or admin unit, it was weighted back to make representative of the population.
So, the question is, how did the response rates differ across different types of staff?
Yeah, so that was lowest among I didn't actually check by college, but I checked the response rates depending on the type of role that you have, and it's kind of a linear. The more senior you are, the more likely you were to respond to the survey, and admin staff were kind of in between the postdocs and the professors in that distribution.
Would you worry a little that because filling this out is a public service, that the type of people that fill this out will be people disproportionately to other public goods?
Yeah, so that could be something that we could look at more, maybe, to see, like, the people who obviously received the email asking to take part in the survey. If you haven't done any of this activity, you're maybe less likely to respond as well. So that's an issue with this kind of work in the UK as well. So.
And you collected this data in 2014. So I'm just wondering that if you talk to colleagues in certain colleges and who have maybe had a high rate of attrition of members in the department, if they may have to turn their focus back in on teaching and away from public engagement. So
you think you might be, because of the timing of the survey, it might
yeah,
be.
because of the time of the survey, and I'm wondering if it, you know, I also noticed that some of the literature, a lot was about 2006, 2007, and, you know, in different financial times, it may be more difficult for people, for members of academic staff, if their teaching levels increase or whatever. That's just...
Yeah.
Basically, you're saying that the workload increased in the last couple of years, so that it may have taken from public service engagement.
Yeah, and I know from, well, just, you know, some colleagues in Cognate schools that they feel that their level of public engagement has dropped off considerably.
It may be as well, there's probably a reason why there's that literature in the UK as well from the years that it is. So it seems like there's been initiatives to encourage this kind of collaboration and communication of scientific knowledge as well. So, yeah. Okay, and one of the other characteristics collected in the survey was the duration of the career in UCD and in the post where the member of staff is at the moment. Here's just the overall UCD career duration. So you can see the variation there for the academics and non-academics. So then the breakdown of the different kinds of activity that were asked about. So as I was saying, you have the main two categories. So you have first public engagement, and then you have these advisory services on boards and committees and public consultations. So these are then broken down into smaller types. So as I was saying, in public engagement, in the first point, we have talks and lectures, debate through print or broadcast media and through social media. And then in the second category, you have engagement with governments and international organizations. So we're talking about governments at the local, regional, national level. And then NGOs at the both local and international levels, and industry both nationally and internationally, and interaction with academic or professional organizations both nationally and internationally, and then another category capturing anything else that's not covered in the other four categories. So here's just the mean value overall of the share of UCD staff taking part in any of these. So taking part in any of the categories, nearly 60% say that over the last year they have engaged in some activity of this sort. And then when you break it down for the different categories, 44% are involved with public engagement. Then nearly 40% advisory services to academic or professional organizations, advice to NGOs or industry, advice to government and international organizations, and then 18% say that they're engaged in some other activity like this. So then when this data is broken down by different characteristics of the staff, so first looking at the breakdown by college, you'll see, so instead of having the 7 colleges here, I've combined sciences with engineering and architecture, and then in the first one, human sciences and business and law into one. So now we have five college groups, and then the people who don't work within the colleges. And as you might imagine, overall, anyhow, the people working in the colleges, so these are mostly the academics, have quite high rates of engagement compared to the non-academic staff, although even here you have nearly 40% of the non-academics who engage in public service activities. The highest rates overall, so with the black bar in the bottom, you have in the arts and Celtic studies, and then in the humanities, business and law. And these are really driven by the high rates of public engagement with the blue bar among here, and also high rates of advisory services with the academic or professional organisations. Okay. When you break this down by grade, so I've put together the postdoc research fellows and research fellows here, and then you have lecturers in one group and professors in one group, and then the administrative officers. You'll see that the engagement in all categories really increases by grade, and is lowest among the administrative officers. Then something that might interest you, especially here for UCD staff, so involvement in one of these research institutes within UCD. First you have the mean values for people who aren't involved or affiliated with any of the research institutes, and then you have this broken down by the different institutes, Geary being here, and Geary ranking very high, not as high as the humanities, but very high again, especially with the public engagement, and Humanities Institute with really high rates, especially driven by the academic and professional organisations advisory work. When you look at this activity then by the length of the career you've had with UCD, as you might expect, you have increasing involvement pretty much with all types of activity as you go from the shortest career lengths up to the highest. But then when you go from 10 to 19 years up to 20 years plus, you have slight decreases with some activities and kind of similar rates, so not so much increasing anymore with your career being 20 years or more. So it seems like the bigger increases are here between at less than 20 years career length. By gender, not that much of a difference between males and females in engagement with different activities, maybe females having slightly higher rates of advisory work with academic and professional organisations, and higher rates as well with the other category. So then if we look at not just the status of either doing this kind of work, or not doing this kind of work, so also the respondents were asked how many hours, including preparation and travel time and all the time involved in this work, how much did you spend on these activities in the year? When you look at this by days, so the hours data divided by 7 if you're assuming a 7-hour day. The mean value, so this is conditional on the hours being positive. So among those UCD staff who took part in these activities, the average days are about 20-something per year, so 170 hours in the year, and that's the distribution there. some people being very, very active. So this then broken down by the categories. So now, on average, so this is conditional. So if you were involved in these activities, the average was, as I was saying, about 170 hours per year. And even though public engagement was the most common category of activity to do, then maybe the most time-consuming, or the category where people who engage in these activities spend the most time on, are actually the advice to academic or professional organisations, advice to NGOs or industry, advice to government, and liaised with the media and the public talks. And if you look at this breakdown then by the different characteristics of the member of staff, it's actually the conditional hours are highest among health sciences, so a slightly different picture to looking at just the percentages of staff in these different categories engaging. But again, you'll see this increase in the conditional hours as you go higher in the grade of academics. The ones affiliated with a research institute have higher conditional hours as well, and the hours generally increase as your tenure lengthens, and females have higher annual hours engaged as well. So then just so incorporating all the covariates together, so instead of just looking at the difference in the rates in a 2 bivariate case, then I put these the percentages of staff engaging and the hours engaged into regression settings. So in the first model, you have a dependent variable as the probability of the staff member engaging in a type of public service activity. So in the first model, it's any type of public service activity, and then you have the different types separated out. So you'll see then when you control for everything else, how the different characteristics are still significant. So in addition to gender, grade, the college, and the tenure length, I also controlled for the institute affiliation, whether you worked part-time over the last year, and whether you took any sabbatical or other leave from your work. So these are also controlled for, but none of those were significant here, so I really just included the ones that remain significant in the multivariate setting, and the gender there as well. So the gender effect is no longer there when you control for everything else. So for the grade, you have lecturer being the reference category. So you still see very significant differences between lecturers and researchers, lecturers and professors, and the administrative officers. And for the college, the reference category is the humanities, human sciences and business and law. And compared to that, you can see that the arts and Celtic studies staff are more likely to engage, sciences, engineering, architecture less likely. The other college dummies are not significant. And you'll see the same pattern as you saw with the simple correlations with the length of tenure at UCD. So the increases by length of tenure, and really the highest effects there with the 10 to 19 years, and the effect of tenure tapering off a bit when you're looking at the really long tenures. And then if you're looking at the hours, a very similar picture again. So with these OLS multivariate models, I also included the same controls as with the previous, and the picture is really much the same, so the gender effect is not really there in a multivariate setting, and you'll see similar pictures again for the grade, for the college, and the length of tenure for.
Is this for the non-zeros?
This is zeros included, yeah, so this is not
Are you just
traditional.
treating them? Okay. But this is really censored at 0. So you should really do it total.
Yeah, so I could do, yeah.
Take care of all the zeros.
Yeah, otherwise you're underestimating the coefficients are biased anyways.
Okay. And then estimating roughly the value of these, so these services that UCD staff provide to the wider economy and community. So when you gross these figures up to represent the whole of academic and the senior admin staff at UCD, the total working days contributed among this group is nearly 20,000 working days in a year. And if then we calculate the value of these roughly, so just using the standard costing practices in grant applications, depending on the different grade of that staff member, so their daily rates in euros, and then the average days in these different staff categories that people contribute to PSA, what these populations are in UCD altogether, and then adding the value of these up together, we get about 11.5 million euro worth of activity contributed in UCD. And just as a rough comparison, if you look at what the university's staff costs were in 2013, was 266 million euros, so this is 4% of that total cost. So in conclusion, this paper fills a gap in knowledge about public service activities. So what staff in universities do beyond their core roles. And we find that almost 60% of academic and senior administrative staff at UCD engaged in these kind of activities in the academic year 2013 to 14. And the most common type of PSA in UCD is public engagement, so talks, lectures, and media contributions. And as you might imagine, this activity is linked to the type of academic role you have, or being a non-academic, also correlates with the seniority of your role and the length of your tenure with the institution. And then if you look at the conditional mean values of the hours that staff have engaged in this activity, it's roughly 170 hours on average per year, varying from 122 hours among researchers and 218 hours among professors. And if you roughly estimate a value for these activities for the year, it's about 11.5 million euro. So that's where we are.